You're good, Eileen. You're good.
Well, welcome everyone. I'm very excited to welcome our guest speaker tonight, Ivette Guillermo-McGahee. And I feel like I'm under a lot of pressure because usually Bill Parkhurst does this, and you know how he has about 60 or 70 years of experience introducing speakers. So I hope I can do a good job introducing Ivette. But many of you might know Ivette as founder and president of Allies in Caring, and she's been at that for over 20 years.
No, 12 years.
12 years.
Feels like 20.
Feels like 20.
But she started her life as a licensed professional counselor, and she combines her role at AIC. She loves contributing to public health, environmental preservation. She's an advisor to the New Jersey Public Health Institute. She's a member of Robert Wood Johnson's Jenga Council, Healthy New Jersey 2030, and she's also a trustee of the Pinelands Preservation Alliance. So in addition to running her business and many other volunteer activities, she's a very busy person. I first actually met Ivette when I was introduced to the Main Street Board. I got invited to become a board member there, and one of the things Cassie kept saying is, you have to meet Ivette, you have to meet Ivette. And when I did meet her, we had a little bit of overlap at her time on the board, and then she moved on to do a lot of other initiatives.
Wherever you want to sit. Excuse us, Ira.
Sure. So, and Ivette came here from Mexico, and she was born in Mexico and raised in a deaf family. And that's something maybe not a lot of people know about you. You have 2 deaf siblings, so you have a very deep appreciation for resilience and what it takes to become part of a community. So with that, Ivette, I'll let you tell your story much better, but I do appreciate you being here today with us.
No, thank you.
So thank you so much.
And we do have
You
a
want
speaker.
microphone?
Microphone?
Yeah,
Okay.
case.
Sometimes I lower my okay. So thank you so much for the invitation, Eileen, and everyone. So happy to see friends, my family that are here too, and Cassie, I've done a lot of work with. So I actually feel this feels like a gift to me, also to be sharing my story. There's something that we know, like as a counselor, that when we share our stories, it's really an opportunity for us to make sense of our lives. So I appreciate the invitation, and I hope that what I share also can be a gift for you in some way. So that's how I have created this tonight's sharing, thinking of what can be relevant for you too of my story. So the first thing I want to say is that when I came to Hammonton, I had this experience of hoovering. I wanted to say something else. I know that I have an accent, and sometimes it's difficult for people to understand what I'm saying. So if you don't understand what I said, you can raise your hand and I can say, and I won't take it personally. So just please feel free to say, what did you say? And then, so when I came to Hammonton, I wanted to. Okay. I'm going to organize my mind. But when I had this experience of just hoovering when I came to the United States, that I needed to land and take root somewhere. And I felt like it was just such a difficult feeling of not feeling rooted. And so my husband and I went to a gathering with a shaman and this shaman, I asked the question. You ask questions to the shaman, and the shaman. I asked the question. So how does one find home? And I explained that I've been carrying this experience for years of not feeling that I have a home because I came here, and so he said, well, wherever you go, you can make it your home. You have to, if you devote yourself to the wherever you are, and you build relationships, and you create a community you want to live in, that community becomes your home. And if it doesn't happen to be the community where you belong, then something else will appear that will show you where your home is. And so that's what I decided to do, to start doing that here in Hammonton, and to just take roots here. And that's why this is David White is one of the favorites that I've fallen in love with. He's Irish. Yeah, I know, my husband also from Irish family. And so this is the poem. He wrote a book that is called The House of Belonging, that is beautiful. And he talks about, I relate so much to him because part of what I carried for many years is this longing, longing for connection, longing for home, longing, and so his book is about that, and how important it is to follow our longing. So with that, I'll go to the next. So I want to share my story in two ways. I think that there's always an outer story of things, events that happen, and there's an inner story, a deeper story of how those things that happen transform us and impact us. So I will be interweaving both. So the outer story, I'll start with that. I have this Statue of Liberty because I think it is really true that the United States is a land of many, many gifts and of promises that we can realize, and particularly for us, as Eileen mentioned, my parents are deaf and my siblings are deaf, and those children that are children of adult deaf people are called CODAs. And I don't know if you watched the movie. There was a movie that won the Oscars, that is CODA, and if you haven't watched it, it's an interesting movie. And so, I'm a CODA, and I'm also a SODA because I'm a sibling of deaf adults. And so, and one of the reasons that I came to the United States is because when we were in Mexico, we were hearing about the American Disabilities Act. And it was just amazing that people had fought, and I don't know if you know about Gallaudet University, but during the time that they were fighting for the American Disabilities Act, people from Gallaudet University were also fighting for their rights. What they were trying to do is they wanted the president of Gallaudet University to be a deaf person, because it has always been a hearing person, and Gallaudet University is a university where people from all around the world who are deaf and have other disabilities come to study, and people who also have other multiple disabilities. So that was so we were in Mexico hearing about this amazing thing that is happening in the United States, where people with disabilities are being treated with dignity and respect, and they think that deaf people and people with disabilities can realize everything. And so that was, and so my sister was the first adventurer who came, and she actually is working now at Gallaudet. She's the head of the Department of Diversity and Inclusion. And also she was getting married 2 years later, and I came to visit her in Washington, D.C. And so I went to visit the Dean of Mental Health Counseling, the graduate program, and I told him my story, and he offered me a scholarship. I came in May, and I started studying in August, so I was so lucky. So that's how I ended up here. But before that, my grandfather came to work before my father was born in the United States. And so he worked in the United States about 20 years, and then he went back to Mexico and met my grandmother and stayed there. But that's another part of my story, because when growing up, my grandfather loved to listen to, I forgot the name, but one of the Frank Sinatra. Yeah, he loved, and he used to dance with my grandmother songs from Frank Sinatra, and he used to read the Times magazine, so it was wonderful that he opened our eyes and he told us stories about his time here. But at the same time, he was kind of not appreciating Mexico. Like the United States was better than in many cases. I know that there are many things that are wonderful here. But it was just this feeling that was not quite, it was painful. It was painful that he felt that way, and that my experience was also that I appreciated my culture and my family and my people. But so there was this, so that I just think sometimes that how life is so interesting, because how I ended up here. I that like 40 years later, no, like many years later, I ended up here. And not my grandfather had already died like a couple of years before I came here. So I wonder how would he have felt if he knew that I followed his steps. So, but he was a migrant worker who also worked in then he moved to work in the factories. I have the sense that he was discriminated. He felt not good enough in some ways, because when he came, he had that kind of attitude about himself and always trying to prove himself. But something that was very great is that when he came back to Mexico, he had enough money and he started a business. He started a business producing drugs, medicine, and it became very successful. And then it's still now in operating in Mexico, and his children operated it. It's kind of not as successful now as when he was running, because there's a lot of competition with the free trade agreement. But still, like he actually what he saved helped him and generations are like us. I was able to go to private school in Mexico because he was able to pay, and so. So this is my family, my parents and my siblings, and my grandfather that I wanted, my grandmother. And this is another part of the story about my life. So how did I end up here in Hammonton? So I was studying at Gallaudet in DC, and Steve, my husband here, was already living in Hammonton. And so we met at a Buddhist community in Washington, D.C., and that's another part of life that maybe many people don't expect, because most of us Latinos are raised as Catholic, and I was raised Catholic. But then because my parents being deaf, we always had questions about how does that make sense that God makes us all different. And so my brother and I, and even my parents, and so spirituality became a very important part of our life as a way to navigate all the difficulties. We grew up very isolated, and also in Mexico and in other countries, people with disabilities are discounted. And now has changed, because my brother actually has taken a lot of what he has learned a lot from the United States, and he's the president of the Deaf Association in Mexico, and he's fighting for rights for deaf people. So what happens here in the United States really has impact in other countries, and many people learn from other countries. So, but growing up, we were it was very hard. Like my parents had like finding jobs, or even for my siblings, because a lot. This was before technology. Now that we have cell phones and computers, it has opened doors for deaf people. So because there's no excuse, like so few people now use the phone to make appointments and so everything. So it has opened the doors for deaf people to find jobs and for everything. But at the time it was hard, and so growing up, we always had a sense of like that we had dignity, that no matter like if you're blind or deaf, or you don't have your limbs, but that you're still a person, and you're still capable of everything. But that was not evident for everyone, and even for myself, because I realized, like I remember going to a quinceañera. You know what a quinceañera is? Like a party that like when girls turn 15 and they dance. So I remember when a boy without arms came to ask me to dance with him, and I was so scared. Because how am I supposed to dance, like in the salsa? Like, how do you do that without arms? But he was so confident, and he showed me he told me just how to hold him. And so I learned that my parents sometimes felt that it was kind of something personal, that people wanted to reject them just because sometimes people were bad. But what I learned is like, we sometimes it's just that we are awkward, that the neighbors that didn't feel comfortable talking to us probably didn't know how to talk to us and how to communicate, and it was just so weird to them, for them, and so uncomfortable not to understand each other that they just avoided us. No, but it was how it landed for my family. It was very painful because my parents always made a lot of effort, like cooking or bringing like cooking something for the neighbors, trying to make friends, and it just didn't. Most of the times, the relationships didn't grow. It just stayed like, and so. I realized that this experience, what I learned in Mexico, growing up with my parents, helped me understand also when I came here to the United States, because it was similar. When I came to the United States, for some reason, I thought, I started studying the Mexican history, because I thought people are going to ask me about Mexico, and I better be prepared to tell them everything about Mexico. And how many people you think were interested? Not many. No. And so, but
We are.
but yeah, but then I had to kind of constantly talk to myself and remember from the past that it's hard when we are different. It's not that we are bad, but just differences are hard. That it's easier to be with people that are similar to you. And to be with someone that is different to you, you have to work harder, and so this has been a constant in life. But so in any case, I kind of took a route to talk about meeting my wonderful husband. So because we ended up my siblings and my whole family explored different religions. The Jehovah's Witnesses came to home because they knew sign language, and we were so excited. But then we learned at the end it was not exactly what we were looking. And so then we discovered Buddhism, and that's what my brother and I have been practicing. My brother, who's the other brother that is hearing, he lives in Valencia, Spain now, and he is a Buddhist teacher there. And so when I came to Washington, D.C., I went to a Buddhist community, and that's where I met my husband. And so he imported me to Hammonton. He's responsible. And so when I remember the first time that I came to Hammonton, and I took the train from Philadelphia because to be close to him, I decided to find an internship. It's fine, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we had some music, good.
About dancing, so.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's perfectly okay. So when the first time that I came to visit Steve in Hammonton, I took the train from Philadelphia, and I just walking in Central Avenue. I was just so delighted. It's so beautiful, the tall trees, and I was really, it was my first impression, is how wonderful it is to be, how beautiful it is here. And so we got married 2 years later, and we decided to have 2 weddings. But before, I have another story that is interesting, because when we met, and so Steve asked me, wow, so what should I learn, Spanish, American Sign Language, or Mexican Sign Language, to be able to communicate with my family? And so of all of them, I chose American Sign Language, because my brother-in-law knew American Sign Language, my parents could understand American Sign Language, and it felt like it would be easier for all of us to understand. And so Steve ordered a CD that he found in the internet. I love always tell that story. But in that story, so he told me I found this CD where you can learn the 4 languages, like it's in English, Spanish, and American. So it was amazing that this existed. And so when we finally are ready to watch this CD, this video CD, my sister is the teacher. So I didn't know that my sister at Gallaudet had recorded that video. We could have asked her, but so she was the teacher in that video. So that's how it happened. Yeah. So, but then, anyways, so then when we got married 2 years later, we decided to have 2 weddings. So this is a wedding in Mexico, and this is with a Huichol shaman. And so Huichol is a tradition in Mexico that are a group of people who have not been colonized or were not completely colonized by the Spanish. So they kept a lot of their traditions. And something that is important for the Huichols is a connection to the heart and community. That's the main thing. And so then this is our Buddhist wedding, and in the Buddhist tradition, when you get married, people come and offer you like kata, they call it, and so they all are friends with. It's such a beautiful experience of like everybody kind of coming and offering some blessings in this way. So it was very special. So this is, I just decided this a little bit, because it's meaningful to me that I'm doing this after 20 years of having come to the United States. So it does feel like something has, I'm at a different stage of when I came, because when I just came to the United States, I feel like I've been working so hard learning the language and learning to separate from family and to be by myself, to build a new community and build a marriage, and then learn how to be a mother. Like I just feel like, oh my goodness, so many things I've been learning for these past 20 years, and it just feels now that okay, I'm starting to breathe, and so. But I feel very blessed with all the things. But so this is so in 2012 I founded Allies in Caring. It was not on purpose. It was so what happened is that I was working as a therapist. I'm trained as a mental health clinician at Atlantic Care. I was working at Atlantic Care, and then I worked at another agency providing in-home crisis intervention. And Catholic Charities invited me to work with a community of refugees that had been brought to Atlantic City from Burma. I don't know if you remember the genocide in Burma. So I started working with this community because there was a deaf kid that kept going to, the police kept arresting him and the family because the kid was walking without shoes in the street, but just as they did in their community. But this community didn't know how to live in Atlantic City, because Atlantic City is a city and they lived in a village. So none of them knew English, and I didn't know their language. But I started teaching them sign language, and so that's how we communicated. And Steve came to one of the parties that we had, and it was beautiful. So they love to play what is the name? The harmonica, and Steve gave them. So it was so beautiful. But so that's how I'm still connected with this boy who is now married and has 2 children and lives in Colorado. I know, yeah, it's wonderful. But after that happened, so I got pregnant with Tara, and I wanted to start my private practice. And so I started my private practice at our home, and people who speak Spanish want to receive services, and they tell me they actually cannot afford my fee. And of course, if somebody's in need, it's hard to say no. Okay, so I tell them, yes, okay, I can work with you, and they tell their friends. There's this therapist who does therapy in Spanish for free, or not for exactly. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to? actually make this work if the people who need the help don't have insurance and cannot afford it. And just out of luck, this director of the agency that where I work for this youth, the deaf youth with the community, calls me and says, like, this kid is again in trouble, and we want you to work with him, but you need to become a provider for the state, because we cannot pay you unless you're. And I said, well, I'm not a provider. How do I become? So no, we will help you. So then they asked DCF, the New Jersey Department of Children and Families, to help me become an approved provider, and that's how I started this practice. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm just going to do this myself. It's going to be small, but no, because people need. There are so many needs in the community, and so the needs don't stop. And I keep telling Steve that it's going to be better. It's going to work next year. We are going to. It's going to be, and that has been 12 years of, of next year. I'm going to be less busy, but it hasn't happened that way.
Right.
Yeah. No, because then as things. Always like we were doing crisis intervention. That's how we started, and then I thought we can't have this. People are in crisis because they don't have the basic needs resolved, and if we just don't attend to the basic needs and provide prevention, they are going to stay in crisis or keep coming back. So, and then I learned. That's when I learned about Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. I remember reading a book about the work that they were doing, and I couldn't sleep, thinking, actually somebody is thinking about what I believe, that it's important to do more, to attend to what now they call it social determinants of health. And what that means is that to really, just common sense things, that people need to satisfy their basic needs, as long as we have our basic, food and shelter, but not only that we live in a community where when we feel that we belong, that we are welcome, that we have jobs where we feel that we can contribute, that we have a relationship with nature where we can relax and have contact with recreation, that we have meaningful relationships. So things that, like now that the health system is very focused on illness, right, and how to cure us, but not focus on what actually makes us naturally happy, and healthy. So when I read this book from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, I thought, this is what I want to do, and this is how I want to. So a little bit later, I learned about the Culture of Health Prize, something that they were promoting, and then I went to Cassie. And so Cassie Jacobelli, when she was the director of Main Street, and so I said, to work on really working together, creating a cross-sector collaboration. That means bringing people from different sectors, transportation, the medical sector, the police, the school district, everybody who needs to be a part of a conversation of how do we create a healthy community. And so that's what we embarked in. In 2019, we applied for, with the mayor and the president of the Chamber of Commerce, Rich Freeman, we applied for this prize and for a grant, and we got it. And so since 2019, then with funding from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, we started the Hammonton Health Coalition. And our work at the beginning was to address the adverse experience of poverty in the Latino community, which contributes to all the problems, right? So sometimes poverty, it starts with poverty that then kids also have behavioral problems, which affects the school district, because the school district then, instead of teaching, the teachers have to manage behaviors. And so it's a win-win for everyone when we come together and see. So that's what we started doing since then. And then out of that, also Pinelands Preservation Alliance is a member of the Hammonton Health Coalition, and in that work, they invited me to be a part of their board. And we have done wonderful things also with the Pinelands, where we bring kids and their parents to trips like kayaking trips or hiking trips, and they as a way for the parents and the kids to develop their relationship. Because what happens with the Latino parents, and I think of most immigrant parents, is that when they come to the States, the kids get acculturated faster than the parents, because the kids start school, they learn the language, they learn the social norms, but the parents don't. And so what happens is that the kids, and especially during adolescence, as they transition, they get it that in order to make it here, you have to fit in. And so they are so worried about they are trying so hard to fit in, and that they don't want, it's difficult for them to also follow their parents' norms. And then that creates, that disempowers the parents. The parents cannot parent their children because the kids are not listening to the parents, or not believing, or don't want to even associate with the parents, because the parents are precisely the population that is being discriminated, and they don't want to be a part of that. And so we are doing a lot of work to help parents and kids connect, and to help navigate the need for both. That now you're in this country and you need to have a strong sense of identity and pride of your Latino culture. And I learned that also from my parents, so like that learn about this, having a sense of pride about being deaf instead of feeling shame. That actually there's a lot of wonderful things about being deaf that I can tell you also later. But instead, and so that was very important. Is the learning not to connect with any condition that we have, illness or anything that happens, like or maybe some people have been abandoned, anything that happened to us that has marked us. It can also be a source of what builds us, what makes us for something special in our life. So that's what I learned from my parents, and that's what I like when we are teaching the parents, the Latino parents, that no, that this is important for you to tell your child, that you understand why this kid will be ashamed because of what they see outside, how they are. And I know this because when growing up, I saw how people treated my father, my mother, how they discounted it, and I was ashamed, and I didn't want people to know that they were my parents. And it was a lot of work for us, for my parents and I, to learn to be okay, that these are my parents. They speak funny, they act sometimes funny, but they are precious in so many ways that other times people cannot see. But I'm going to speak about it, because they cannot speak about it sometimes. So it's the same that we are doing here with the community, with the Latino community, that helping really resuscitate the value that each identity has. And that's thanks to Cassie, we are celebrating our 4th Hispanic Heritage Month in September. There's a big party that I invite you to come. It's a lot of fun and delicious food. On September 14 is the 3rd Thursday. It's going to be in downtown Hammonton, and so you can enjoy that. But that's the purpose why we are doing it, because we want to help people who had been for a long time ashamed of who they are, to reconnect with roots. And also from the clinical perspective, there's a lot of research that shows that people who have a strong sense of identity tend to do much better in life than those who carry shame. Shame is a very heavy, damaging experience. And so that's very important. A lot of people there are studies that people with shame also tend to use drugs, or like you cannot draw a direct connection, but there is a correlation that they see. It's interesting that people who report having experienced shame also are struggling with some alcohol or drug issues. And also violence, because sometimes when you are carrying that self-hatred, you also then project it in others or discharge it in others.
Yeah, because it manifests anger.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I feel as a society it's important for us to know that as like how damaging it is when we inadvertently contribute to that sense of shame, because it really has a lot of repercussions. And when we help everyone to have a sense of dignity and value, that also has that helps individuals to become good citizens and contributors of the community. They feel like they are valuable, so they can then be a part of the community and want to do something for the community. And that's the work that Allies in Caring is doing. The vision of Allies in Caring is that everyone can contribute. Everybody can be a contributor. And that's what I learned also from being at Gallaudet University. One of my peers who was studying with me, she was suffering of Usher syndrome. And Usher syndrome is when you start losing your sight and your hearing. And so she knew that in 10 years she was going to be deaf and blind. And she was studying her master's in mental health counseling. And I thought, like, what is she doing here? Like, she's going to be deaf and blind. How is she going to work? What is she going to do with this? But she was so certain that that's what she needed to do, and she was going to do it, and she was going to find her way. So that's another gift that I feel that sometimes we project our own insecurities or lack of confidence in what we could do. I think if I didn't have my legs, would I be as resilient as other people? I don't know. But there are people that are so resilient that we don't know how that comes to. But so then at the Jenga Council, just briefly, so the Jenga Council and Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, I don't know how many are familiar with Robert, but Robert Wood Johnson Foundation has some association with Johnson & Johnson, the corporation, and so a lot of the money goes to good causes, and it's Robert Johnson Foundation at the international level is one of the foundations that is doing the most to contribute to health, really advancing healthcare, and the interest. The United States is one of the countries where we spend the most money in healthcare with the worst outcomes. And so that's why there is this interest in what do we actually need to do so that things are better. And so and the council that I'm a part of is helping advise the foundation on how to create paths to also think of people with disabilities, people of color, that sometimes the healthcare is not hasn't figured out how to also promote health and support their health. And then in 2024, I want to tell you, so we are Allies in Caring is going through growing pains. Remember, we are 12 years and we are entering the 13. So I told them we are going through our adolescence too. So we are changing, and there's a lot of things going. But there are other exciting things that are happening with Allies in Caring that we, as part of the work that we have been doing in the communities, we were recognized as having the ability to empower the community, because Allies in Caring has invited members of the Latino community to be facilitators of groups, to be their own health promoters themselves. So because of that, we were invited to be a part of a global group of other communities in the United States first, last year, where a community from Texas, from New York, from Dayton, Ohio, California, New Mexico. So we are 7 communities that are learning together how to create healthier communities. like 7 organizations learning how to create healthy communities. But then that has been a year and a half. So last year we were invited to join an international cohort. And so then I traveled to Colombia to work with another cohort of organizations all over the world that are learning how do we transform our communities. And then on October, I'm going to Sierra Leone in Africa to work with Sierra Leone. I don't know if you read or you saw there's this movie about the blood diamonds, that there was a terrible genocide. So, but they are rebuilding their community and through a lot of truth and reconciliation and their own ways of coming together as a community. And so, and the reason that we are, this is all supported by Jenga, by Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and another organization that is called Root Cause, and also another organization that is connected directly with the UN. And the reason is because there's more and more conversations in this field that what we need to go back is to communities, to work as a community. That this way of delivering health, of creating healthy communities by having hospitals or corporations prescribe, that's not sufficient. It's important, but that what really creates health is relationships, having meaningful relationships, having communities where people get along, where people support each other, where people can contribute. Like there's a lot of research about volunteering, precisely what you are doing. How that keeps us healthy, how that helps us live well. So that because of that, and because also because there's a point that we cannot keep spending just money like in medicine and x-rays and like all this, but we have to figure out how to live well, and that's what is going to help us as a society. So that's the purpose of this work. And so these are other pictures related to who is a member of the Hammonton Health Coalition, and Kathy is there with Rich Freeman and Ben when we our first meeting for this coalition. And this is kind of also part of the work, the Hispanic Heritage Month. And this is other work that like advocating is also a very important part of our work. We have had community meetings to listen to each other and learn what is important for the Hammonton community. And so I'm almost done. I just wanted to check how much time am I going over my time?
You have 2 more hours.
How much more time?
You have 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Okay, that's generous. Okay. So, yeah, so the deeper story, like making these connections of the different things that have happened. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, growing up, I've always had a longing. I felt because I was in the deaf world, like with my parents and siblings, but then also as a hearing person, I felt like I didn't belong to one or the other. And in my deaf world, there was no music, like with my parents and they couldn't relate to music, and they couldn't relate to, and then also my parents had a lot to say about hearing people because they had been, like, there's something that they say, like similar to what people say in racism, there's autism. So like when people oppress others based on being deaf, so they will say like, oh, hearing people are autists and all that, and I'm like, I'm a hearing person. So it was very hard, like to be in this world, like listening to those things and really always trying to prove myself that I don't want to do that to deaf people, but of course I did it sometimes because we are all imperfect, and I made mistakes. Like sometimes I would act in ways that felt not inclusive for them, and sometimes like I just got tired. Like for example, in Mexico, it still is a problem that at the time we didn't have closed captioning for TV, and so I would be interpreting the TV, whatever is on the TV, to my parents. And sometimes I was just tired. I didn't want to do it. And so, but then it was not always understood because you can hear it. How come you don't want to do it if you are hearing? And how lucky you are that you can hear. And so it was hard, or like going on vacation, which I hated to go on vacation because I felt that it was extra work for me to be interpreting for the hotel and for this and that, and I just didn't feel like I get to rest. Like I was like more work, yeah. It was more work for me. So those kind of things, it was always difficult to negotiate. So sometimes I wished to be deaf. I felt that my life would be easier if I was deaf than hearing. And other times, of course, now I understand that it is a privilege to be a hearing person. That is so much like, just I talked to my sister about all the things that I'm learning when I'm cooking, like listening to audiobooks or driving. And she tells me, you're so lucky. If I want to learn, I have to sit and lay down I have to sit to read. Or my brother and I who are hearing, we talk to each other more often than to and then they ask why. And because I go for a walk with my dogs and I can be talking to my brother in the phone, right? But for my sister, I have to just I have to sit down and dedicate myself to talking to her. So all of those things that sometimes we don't remember, like what a gift is to be able to hear. And sometimes when I hear people that we don't want to hear about privilege, I understand why, because it's heavy, and that's my parents always used to say, you are so lucky and you're so privileged, and I hated it. But now it's true. There are gifts that we have that other people don't have, and that it's hard to accept, but it's also important to know how gifted we are sometimes. And so the other is that the other contradiction or the other polarity that I grew up with is that my grandfather, who came to the United States, it became more affluent, and they, as I said, like we were able to go to private schools, but my father wasn't making a lot of money because being deaf, his opportunities were more limited. So I lived in this world, and my mother's family was not affluent either. So I lived in this world where I would go to the private school and see all the kids, what the kids who have money get to do, like go to Disneyland for vacation, and I go up to my home and we are like building our house and with a window. So it was this contradiction of like living two lives. But now I think, oh, what a gift, because I feel like I can navigate both. I can understand one and the other, and also like now another gift that I feel like I work with undocumented people, and what is precious about that is that people who are undocumented and finally, like for example, we just met a family who finally made it from Venezuela after 3 years of leaving Venezuela and going through different countries and made it here to Hammonton, who are wonderful family, very hardworking. So after so many difficulties that they have gone, and so having a job, like she washes dishes, she's just so grateful that she gets to wash dishes because they for so long. But she was a nurse in Venezuela, and he also he's a wonderful musician who is now driving FedEx, like so. But it's just when I meet these people, it's just a constant reminder of how like the things that we forget that are a gift. We get so used to them and then we complain. Like, so I really because I'm working with these communities, I feel like it's harder to complain. I still complain, but it's harder because but you know how there are people that are living other lives, and there are people that are really starting from other places, and then we get other gifts. So the other also the growing up, like living in different religions, because for my grandmother, my mother's mother, when we stopped going to Catholic church, it was like she came to bless our house and everything. So it was so. But that also has been another important experience of like really. Now I meet like more people from all different beliefs, and just that the core of the teachings, of the spiritual teachings, are always about love. Always about acceptance, and so that's important to me also. And the other thing also that has been a very important experience and wonderful has been to be married to Steve, my husband. So which was not easy at the beginning, because the cultural difference is also a challenge, and I remember at times like doubting myself, and especially when you are. When the majority of the culture, for example, like simple things like being more emotional, and that might be more overwhelming sometimes for someone who's not that emotional, or needing. And I think this is not necessarily always race, because even in the same race you have differences, right? Mm-hmm. But I did feel at the beginning it was just a kind of a part of a learning. Like how do we do this? Like why did we get married? Why did we see in each other? So this question, like why did we do this? That is so difficult. So, but at the same time, so I just when I think about it, it seems like something in me has always. My life has been a constant. Being in between worlds, right? This always like it has not, and that in that now that I think about, and that's what I hope that is a gift for you, because the conversations that I have with other people in various communities are like, oh well, we in the school, for example, like the school is becoming more difficult to be a teacher because. We have more kids that we don't understand their culture. We can talk to their parents, and we are not prepared for this. And with the police, is the same. Like so we are becoming a more complex society, where people from like so we are starting to have more differences in our society, and it's becoming more complex. And when things get difficult, like an easy solution we might think is just to keep people who are like different in their place, and then we just. And I had the same thought that is when we were working in the Hammonton Health Coalition, and we also had our like difficulties, and sometimes it was heartbreaking. I went to this conference, and in the conference this woman said that it was time for us that instead of asking others to sit in to be invited to their table, we could set up our own table and have our own table. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I'm tired of asking people to invite me to their table. I even mentioned that. And I remember Rich Freeman said, like, what? Like something like that. Why would we do that? And now I think it's true. Like sometimes it's true that it's a good idea that rather than always begging and working, to you also create your own table. What I feel I've done with Allies in Caring, like I've created a table where like Latinos can come and sit, and they are welcome, and we make it. We listen. We eat mole and the things that we like, and we make it easy for ourselves. But at the same time, still working on going to the table where others who are different, because that's how we grow. That's how we open our hearts. That's how we open our minds. That's how we. So I feel that in this sense, the being married to Steve, who is from a different culture, it has been in that way. Like I give a constant training in being curious. How do I see from his perspective? How do I, and also how do I stand on my feet when I feel tempted to just give up, or to just like that's what I think sometimes with assimilation, that some people, like for example that I decided to do, even like with Tara that is here, my daughter, but I always speak Spanish to her, and then she responds in English. And then, but she knows Spanish now. So this kind of thing so for me has been a practice of not giving up, of like finding also what is true for myself, what I need to honor, even if it's hard, but also how do I negotiate my relationship with this community. And so I'm going to, I'm just checking. So I feel that my longing to, what I wanted always to transform was this hostility in relationships, and this sense of, also I think for my parents, they lived with a lot of pain, especially my mother, the difficulties of connecting with others because she took it personally. So for me, it's also a constant learning of when we cannot connect, when we misunderstand each other, do not take it personally. Just that is hard. It's very hard. I remember I was in a group with other therapists. I've been doing this group for 17 years now, where we meet other therapists and we learn together. And when I started the group, this woman was very irritated because it was so difficult to understand my accent. And I thought, it's so difficult to understand you. So we are having the same experience, but so that, I don't know that. So it's difficult for all of us to be with differences. But now, this woman that I'm still in the group, 17 years later, we are good friends. We are like good companions. So I'm going to close with this. I feel that the transformation for me has been about learning that to live with the contradictions and paradoxes, or like learning to accept that. And I think that it happens in all relationships, because if we are genuine, we are going to be brave to bring out who we are, and sometimes it's not going to be the same that our spouse is, right, or our friend. So if we are really genuine, we are going to be brave to be different sometimes, luckily. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because sometimes when we try to get along, we suppress our differences, right? But if we are brave and we manage to be genuine, and we don't suppress our differences, and we bring out who we really are, we are going to bring our differences. And that's going to be hard, but that takes us to a place of genuine and depth and intimacy. So but for that, what I've learned is that we really have to kind of hold, like, for example, that, I don't know if it's too much to hear, but like my husband is more an introvert, I'm more like an extrovert, and that both are important. I feel so precious to be with an introvert because he takes his time to think, he thinks deeply, he makes a space, and I have this other way that I help our social life, no? So that's kind of the goodness of tolerating this difficulty with being different. And I think it's a deeper joy when so I invite all of us to kind of open to that, making a space for differences rather than running away from them. Thank you so much for the invitation.
I wanted to say a really quick thing because, a lot of the things that Ivette is talking about, we've gone through in our journey. And so I just wanted to publicly say, number one, the thing that I hope you all picked up is her genuineness. I think that comes across, and the pureness of her heart. I think in many regards, over the years working here with Ivette, she's an agent of change in this town. And sometimes when you are an agent of change, you are mischaracterized because you're rocking the boat. You are asking people to think about something from a different perspective, and it's a little bit uncomfortable. So, when there's decisions that are made to put up the Latino flags, or to have posters bilingual, or to bring the culture to some of our Third Thursdays. There, as the Main Street director, there was pushback in a town that saw themselves differently. I actually heard that when I first came here. I moved here 16 years ago, and I literally had people tell me, when I said, so, I don't know anybody here, what would you like me to do? What can I do to help Main Street? And they looked down the street and said, you see them? And with them being them, get rid of them and we'll be a much better place. And that was kind of, not the prevailing attitude, but there were some of those attitudes that existed in this town that saw itself in a certain perspective. So when somebody like Yvette comes along and she's kind of asking initially to be at the table, and then she's like, well, hell, I'll make my own table and make our presence. It has been profound. It has had an unbelievable impact on, in my opinion, in my town. Having come from a college environment, it was a little hard for me to come to a small town that saw it a little differently, and I think she's done a great job. The other thing I wanted to say was, we see her in this town, but I just want everybody to understand when she just like casually mentions international, being on this council and all. In the state of New Jersey, Yvette is like literally a rock star. In many regards, in Hammonton, she's not. But in the scene of the state of New Jersey, if you walk into a room with Yvette, which I have, she's at a whole nother level than anybody I know in this town, period. And I just wanted to say that you deserve this presentation, but we in this community are very, very fortunate to have you do the things you're doing for our town, but also for the state of New Jersey and now internationally. I think you're just amazing.
Bravo.
I do feel, I really do, and I don't just to please you, but I do feel that Cassie has held my hand in many ways.
Mutual.
Yes.
Mutual.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Just great, just great.
Yeah.
You got about 5 or 6 plugs there.
Plenty of refreshments still available in the back for everyone who didn't get anything, please partake.
Well deserved, it sounds like.